Well, thanks for inviting me. When Trevor extended this invitation, I said I don't know anything about leadership. I never think about it. So we concocted this conversation as part of it. But first, I'm going to go through a few slides on our firm and some of the ideas that underpin our work, as well as our studio culture and kind of how leadership is sort of a theme throughout our work. So we actually were founded in 1995. Our ideas then, there was like maybe 4 of us. So we were obviously quite small, working in very, very pragmatic projects. And that was a manufacturing piece that you just saw, manufacturing facility. So this is our team. We've grown, I think last year we added 11 people to the studio. So we're really on a roll. I feel like I'm chasing. I'm just a little bit behind. So leadership from behind. How about that? Our leadership is also expanded in the past year. So we have 5 of our colleagues. Matt Kreilich is the co-founder here, and 5 of our other colleagues are now in leadership roles. So we're really building the sort of broadest form of leadership with very specific talents being brought into the studio. Our work, as I said, is diverse. Here we're showing, the phrase here is from ballparks to border stations. We have an idea that our work is both pragmatic and as well as poetic. And so joining those two seemed very important to us, that we are not only dealing with our clients' needs, but also their aspirations. We've got high aspirations coming from our clients. And those aspirations are generally focused somewhere on how architecture can change culture. And that idea that architecture can change or impact culture is dear to our hearts. Yeah. We're people that really believe in the power of architecture. And so that kind of starts there. So here you see that sort of incredibly broad range of work that we do, and we're actually exceeding now in size of projects. So we have everything from this small highway rest stop to many millions of dollars, 20,000 seat soccer stadium in St. Louis. So, we're seeing as our team grows, we're seen as being capable of doing larger and larger projects, which is incredibly gratifying because these are projects that have a great impact on the community in which they reside. And this one was very dear to my heart because it was all about the ownership. Wasn't just about sports and money, which sports are kind of driven by that. They were really about healing their community and about looking forward in St. Louis and changing the culture to a very optimistic and forward thinking. And so what we wanted to do is design a stadium that was open to the community. And so this image, we always throw the tagline on, the city is at every match. And so you're never at the match thinking that you're just seeing soccer, you're seeing a game, but you're also seeing where it is and how important that is. Historic restoration context is key to every piece that we do. And so this project in Minneapolis was very much about how to create that wall of buildings, how to respect the buildings that are there, but give a new voice to the future. And then that idea that beauty and functionality can be combined. We love this quote from one of our clients, a very pragmatic guy. He's the director of operations and facilities for Customs and Border Protection. So kind of amazing that he was catching this. We're very interested in sort of the technical assembly of design, and it's just very important for us to understand that the delivery of the building itself, understanding the constructional aspects of the project are very important to our work, bringing together material and detail. I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of our culture, and I've had people come into the studio and say, man, it's quiet in here. That's in the morning. In the morning, you come in and everybody would, well, this is back in the day when actually people came to the office, but it was, very heads down, very focused, really an intense investigation of the work that would change very quickly into conversations about the work. And these conversations were very important to the development of the work and to the development, more importantly, of the ideas that underpin the work. And then lots of meals together and discussions and presentations of different ideas within the studio. People actually hang out together afterwards. We would schedule bike rides to historic buildings. So this is a Frank Lloyd Wright house that we knew the owner, and just general. Also, the bike club was, kind of doing this commute challenge. So that was kind of interesting. And then this sort of general camaraderie within the studio. When we get an award, the entire studio gets the award. It's not just Matt and I. We ask our team members to come up and accept the awards because it's just so important for us to recognize that architecture is not it's not a one person. It's not a single voice. It's not one person. It's a chorus. We like to think of our work as coming from citizen architects, and we do quite a bit of pro bono work. We've actually developed a group, nonprofit group that is basically Snow Kreilich Architects backwards ask. And so with that, we're investigating projects and ideas that cannot be brought into the office that have a different life. We have 12. Wow. So we have a lot of us. Oops, it didn't go. There we go. Okay, now the computer and the screen are off, but that's okay because we're almost done. So we have a teaching studio. Many of our colleagues are teaching, and so that's kind of a huge deal for us that we're staying in touch with students that are coming up and bringing them along. Collaboration is one of our key factors in what we do. And community is hugely important to us. This is a project that we're doing with the Phyllis Wheatley Center in North Minneapolis, and this is the Catherine Parsons Camp in, west of town. And so this has been land that they've owned for years and years. And they would bring their students out there from North Minneapolis for day camps and overnight stays. And it hasn't been in use for years and years. And we're working with a group of architects and M.A. Mortensen to clear out some of the brush and clear out the buildings and start them on a path of reusing. And then I want to go back. There we go. I wanted to end on this slide. This is our studio accepting the L.E.A.D award. And I do this because my colleague Trevor at the far right, who was the only man smart enough to understand that you wear a light-colored suit in the summer in New York when it's 100 degrees. So with that, I'm going to have Trevor come up and we'll have a conversation. I'm going to have, you get this, you get the.
Thanks, Julie. That was fun. It's fun to see those old photos.
Yeah. You've heard that story before, haven't you?
Can everybody hear me?
So, yeah, Trevor was with us for years.
Yeah, 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
It was great.
It was great.
We miss you.
I miss you too. Thanks, Julie. So this is really cool. It's really cool to have you. So thanks for coming. Thanks for accepting my invitation to come out so early in the morning. And thanks to everybody here for coming out so early in the morning. I think what I'd like to start with is really thinking about what you started with, which is that the studio is growing. Actually, it started growing when I first joined you.
Yeah.
I was sitting at the back of the studio on this bank of desks all by myself, and everybody was like, "Are you okay? You're like way back there." And then it got filled, and then I moved. And so it's great to see that kind of growth happening. How do you deal with that growth? And particularly, you talked about culture.
Uh-huh.
How does that impact the studio's culture, this growth, new energy? How does that change the way in which you lead?
Yeah, it is new energy, but I would say that fundamentally, what Matt and I have done is we've pulled in a lot of people to do many of the tasks that are required to run an office, allowing us to work directly with the teams. And so basically, the project structure, the teams that work on the projects is essentially the same. And that's how we maintain the culture, is you have the same set of ideas, the same, everybody knows how to go through this project, conversations, challenges, that kind of thing. And so if it's based on keeping those core teams together, and then basically taking the advantage to having many more people is you get many more ways of supporting the project work. So if you have 30 or 40 people, you can, expand and have an annex area in which you've got a lot of tools to make presentations and to have conversations. And you get to have a really cool shop. And you get to have, you get to start your sort of investigatory arm, that nonprofit piece. So you can support those things if you're large enough, and those feed back in, and you just have to make sure whatever you're doing that's ancillary is also feeding back into the projects. So does that make sense at all?
No, totally. And I think one of the things that I really appreciated, and I think is a big part of the culture, is that the studio is principal-led, right? There's your involvement and Matt's involvement throughout all of the projects, and the way in which you sort of tie this, this byline across projects.
Right.
Can you speak to how you do that, particularly as you're growing during a pandemic when you're somewhat remote?
Yeah, that's it's really funny because when I think back, we talk a lot about the idea of collaboration as being the foundation of the culture in the studio. It's the foundation of the design process. And so typically, we would be doing major pinups and having a bunch of people look at it and, having conversations within, cross-team conversations within the studio. And it took us a pandemic to figure out how to do that online. And so we use Miro, we use Zoom. People are doing a lot in decks. So we have Uh, 90% of our work now is on the computer. Far less model building. Drives me nuts. One of the things I've learned to do is sketch on my pad over somebody's deck. And trying to draw real time on a screen is torture. So it's, we're building skills, but we also are using tools for capacity to continue that sort of intensive collaboration and questioning of the work.
And do you think that those tools will remain even after you presume everybody comes back?
Yeah, because there are people that can't come back because of issues within their family, or Axel moving to Holland.
Yeah.
One of our colleagues needed to move back to the Netherlands because his parents had some issues, so he wanted to be there, and they're now finding that they love it there. He was actually grew up in Holland, so and we're starting to do more remote work. So I think right now we're in a hybrid situation where we try to get people to come in as much as possible so we can have those intense conversations. But we also are retaining those tools as we work. We have one of our colleagues, Brad. I think you know Brad. Is in Portland. He went back because of his girlfriend. Sheesh. And yeah, I like to see the guy being the trailing spouse. Sorry. Anyway, so I think we'll continue to work that way. I think let's not throw away any tools that work.
Yeah.
But I think there is something really important about getting the younger colleagues in the studio because there's just so much that you absorb from your older colleagues, even if you're not working on a project with them. So we've got very tight project teams right now, but we don't have the sort of universal feeling of coming in and being part of this larger whole as much.
Yeah.
I think that's tough.
That's cool. So when we were talking, we were, Julie and I chatted before this. One of the things that you said that I found just so profound was you said sort of one of the sort of fundamental leadership aspects is for architects is to lead their client, right? is to sort of help bring them along. And could you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really important is to understand what our profession provides. And our profession provides the power of architecture to our clients. And if we don't capitalize on that, if we let them lead the project, they won't get that. They won't get that kind of amazing power of what we do. So we're the professionals. We know design. On the other hand, they know what they need. They know what their aspirations are, and we have to fulfill those. And so those are really, really critical. We can't come in and say, here's what I think your aspiration is. We have to get them to say it and talk about it. One of the issues that we have fairly frequently is we might be working with an architect on the other side of the table that wants to tell us what our process should be. We're having this issue now. And I think I totally respect the profession of owners reps, don't get me wrong. But it's very difficult when somebody says, now you're going to show 5 things, now you're going to show 3 things, and now you're going to do this, and we need this information and that information. Because I think our skill is in knowing how we work best and how to get the best out of a project. And so this to me is leadership. It's leadership in service to our clients.
Yeah. And then I think we also talked, a little bit about this idea that leadership extends across the team.
Yeah.
that every member of the team has a sort of leadership responsibility. Can you speak to that?
So, and I think that works 2 ways. It's not only, when you say the team, it's the entire studio, and it's also the project. And so the project team, there is a dependence on people on that team saying what they think and coming from their own field of experience and their own field of skills that they have in architecture. So, and they need to understand that they need to also listen to our consultants and bring them into the decision making. And so the project is clearly about everyone on the design team being a leader of their own element or aspect of the project, and bringing along everybody else in their way of thinking and their perspective. The studio has, as we've grown, has really expanded in terms of building expertise within the studio. So, for instance, we had one gentleman that was Matt Tierney, that was very committed to doing pro bono work and very committed to academic research. And so through Matt, we decided to create Ask. And so we set up this nonprofit with his leadership. Now we can go after grants. He's writing grants, and we can get grants for various areas of investigations. And we can do this pro bono work. And so we also have groups within the studio that are expanding our understanding of how to build sustainably. And we have others that, like Axel and Andrew, that started a more design-focused investigation where, we'd have somebody coming in from out of town, and we have a list of buildings that they need to go see in Minneapolis and in the area, so that young people would come in and understand the value of looking at stuff. And we started a book club, the Design Book Club, and then we had Trevor, who we had this Monday morning meeting, and Trevor would come in on Monday. No, not every Monday morning. We had it was the monthly office meeting. Yeah. And so Trevor would have Trevor's quiz, and he'd show buildings and talk to people about, we had to guess where was the building and who did it, and we very rarely got it.
Almost never. I think
Almost
twice.
never. And then you talk about it, and that idea of bringing this design voice into the studio. So I really feel that we don't want to hire people that just want to sit at the desk and perform a task. We want people to come in that are fully alive, engaged, and leading.
Yeah. And so the studio is obviously, you talked about it being very small and then it's grown. And we've talked a little bit about the ways in which things have changed and evolved. Do you feel like your leadership style or what is needed in leadership has changed in that arc as well?
It changes daily. And you know how much architects love the word style. We're always denying that we have a style, that everything is conditional. And I think the same thing is true of leadership. That it has to do, because I actually had to think about it because I knew we were talking. That leadership changes according to the conditions that you're in. So when I started looking at leadership, I just Googled it, just for the heck of it, and I found like these posters. So this is lead from behind, lead from the front, lead from the middle. And I thought, it can't really just be positional. That's not possible. But I do believe that leadership and how you talk about where you're going as a studio or where you're going with a project, it needs to be strategic. And so you may lead from the front with some clients and from the back with others. You may lead, out in the forefront of all of your consultants, or you may just be asking them questions and getting them to participate in the decision process. So I think it's very conditional, and I do believe that you change how you lead every 10 minutes in a day. If you're not agile, if you have one leadership style, I think you're going to miss a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, it does look like one of those posters that.
You know what I'm talking about? Lead from anywhere.
Yeah. You've been vocal about the need to have a work-life balance. That was something when we were in New York at receiving the award. It was, Julie saying that we should have a 40-hour work week was like, people started clapping and cheering, and because we
7,000 architects in the room, and they thought this was a new idea.
Exactly.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. So where does that come from for you? Because I think we're in a profession that's just notorious for discarding that notion. Just seems so completely foreign.
Yeah, it's funny because I was working in a corporate firm. I didn't start my own studio right away. My kids were older. And I never had pictures of the kids. I never had all of those reminders of home at my desk because I really felt like I didn't want to point out that I didn't want to bring attention to the fact that I'm a woman and that I have other responsibilities, because that wasn't looked upon in a good light. And I just think that's so stupid to pretend like our colleagues don't have lives outside the office. And then, selfishly, I have to say, if you have a life outside the office, that means you're having different experiences than I am. That's good. I want your different experiences brought into the studio because it helps us understand how this project is going to work in the world, and it's critical. And so it's self-serving. And I also think people are a lot saner if they get to go away and come back. I think they're more creative if they go away and come back. I read an article once that the iPhone would have come out a year earlier if people hadn't worked on it 24/7. And that's incredibly important. If you think about how many mistakes you make from, let's say, 8 o'clock at night until 2 in the morning, and then you have to come in at 6 in the morning and fix them until noon, and then you've got like from 1 to 8 to do stuff. So it's not productive. And if people can't keep their marriage together and they can't keep their family together, they're going to be distracted. They're not going to work well. And so it feels so ridiculous to me that we expect people to be productive for 16 hours in a row. That's not possible. We're not built that way.
Yeah.
I think.
No, I totally agree. I'll ask this question and then I'll open it up for some questions. So on the 40-hour work week, we're now seeing the Great Resignation, right?
Yes.
Due to the pandemic. And I know as a profession, we're like really slow to change, sort of glacial pace. But do you think that might speed up some changes within the profession in terms of how the profession approaches its work, office cultures, that type of thing?
I think it has. I will say, Trevor, that you were our last resignation.
Oh no!
Nice of you to bring this up.
Oops! Didn't see that one coming.
So yeah, I think people need to go where the opportunities are, and I think we're struggling to fill roles in the studio, but I think we've been able to capture a lot of people because of the culture that we have. And it's not just the culture of an 8-hour workday. It's the culture of being in a studio where you make a difference, where you can see, where you can come in and if you're passionate about something, you can pull the studio in that direction. And, for instance, we've got, Karen is so passionate about equity and inclusion. And she started an equity and inclusion group within the studio. And she's now working on, now I'm totally blanking on the equity. There's a certification that you can get as a company.
Oh yeah, just label.
Just label. Yeah, thank you. So I think there are those aspects of being able to come in and lead your best life as an architect within a studio and imagine what that is. That's important to us. So I think, yeah, I mean, we're going to see people that are going to, it's just too hard. It's too hard when you've got, two little kids to take on this other major role or whatever. I mean, their circumstances are changing, but our colleagues have shown incredible resilience through this pandemic. I mean, we've had people that are, like Mike Heller with 3 little kids, and his wife is, a doc, curing people of COVID. Okay, is that right? I don't know. That probably isn't what she'd say, but anyway. So the point is that we want to be able to help people balance, but we also want you to be a full participant in the studio when you come in.
Thanks, Julie. I'll open up if there are any questions from the audience.
Hi, Julie. I'm Pete. I'm a graphics guy, not an architect. So,
Right.
But I'm also a sports fan, and I wanted to ask you about CHS Field because it doesn't sit like most stadiums. It's not a coliseum that just sort of like looks plopped down. In fact, you can be in Lower Town and not even know it's there almost. So, can you talk to like the intention or how you used what you were given in the way of real estate there to kind of create that effect?
Sure, that was like the craziest thing, because I don't know if you remember, the building that was there before was the Gillette building,
Right?
And it was precast tilt slab building. So basically, 5th Street just ended in this huge building. What was interesting is it was excavated down below because it was served from under the bridge, and so the base of that building was quite low, below the street. So when we saw this, we thought, well, what would be really great is to be able to have the field level down at that, and then have the bowl sort of carved out of the land, and then the concourse on the level with the city. So it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And what's really cool about baseball is the field dimensions are so malleable. And so fitting it in was obviously a trick with the OMF facility along the side. We had to cut that concourse down, but we still, the team really understood the importance of the 360-degree concourse. And so they were able to work with us to get the field dimensions so that it's not a hitting park or a pitching park. All of this I learned. I had no idea. I have learned to call. So you have a game, right? Well, no, not in soccer. You have a match. So I've had to change my language every time I do a different sports facility. It's a different thing. So I've had to learn a lot. But to me, again, that was the owner's leadership. That was the kind of team, and the project was led by St. Paul Parks Department, which is so cool, and so the whole idea was to create this in this historic district to make you feel like you're in this Lower Town while you're in the park. And so as you're sitting there, you're seeing the city beyond, and it's really, again, it is very similar to what we're doing in St. Louis. that you don't have to leave the city to be part of the match or be part of the game. And that it's a new paradigm for sports. I don't think there are very many that are doing it. Most of the sports facilities are getting built now outside of town.
Right.
So the urban thing is really cool. We got another.
Other questions? Okay, one second. I'll be right over there.
Did that kind of got to?
I
Yeah.
also had a graphic design intern that worked there, and he worked in that office, and on the other side of the glass wall was the outfield. And
Yes.
he could work and watch the game at the same time.
Isn't that cool?
He was in heaven.
Well, that was a cost-cutting measure.
Oh, really?
It was. We had the team up above the shop in that whole area, and Ryan kept saying, "Now we got to save some money." And we thought, well, we could put it below and then put this glass wall in. And in the model, you could see how cool that view would be. So, yeah, way to cut costs, right?
Wow. Win-win.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hi, Julie.
Hi.
Sylvian, I'm with MG McGrath. Can you speak a little bit about why the why the physical 3D model is leaving the profession slowly? I mean, you brought one of the first thing you brought up was that jokingly, but is there something happening at that level that doesn't allow for that kind of design scrutiny anymore?
Yeah. Yes, I would say. I mean, it is so much easier to create a physical model and walk your client through a physical model, either on the screen or, have them put on the goggles and walk through their facility. Much easier. And I will say that I am insisting that we continue to use the physical model. And I also want to say that we had an intern from Dunwoody that put our model shop into shape, Hannah. So Hannah graduated, I'm pretty sure. So we're doing another project in St. Louis, and I insisted that we do a model for it, a physical model, and it's in Forest Park, this enormous, larger than Central Park in New York, park in St. Louis. And it was a building that was pushed into the hillside. And so it was very much about that topography. And so I thought it would be really important to have a model. And we were talking about massing ideas at the time. So I had my crew build the model and brought my suitcase in so they could size the thing so I could, carry it on. And it was, I would say, maybe 50, 60 pounds by the time we got all the acrylic and all of the, and I had to put it in the overhead. Because I don't trust, you should never trust baggage. And so one of the big problems that we have is traveling with these things. And, we've had work that we wanted to send the model to New York. And it literally, we have crate, probably half the size of this, well, maybe quarter the size of the stage to ship a model. And it's just, but I think you're asking a question that's maybe slightly different, which is also how do we use it in the design process itself? And that's, it is the best way to create a conversation about the work. If you have to sit next to one person and you have to zoom through something, it's really hard. It's really hard on everybody. And if you can just sit there around the model and you can see it from whatever angle and you can move your head, you don't have to ask somebody to move the camera. It's so important. And so I really think for creating schemes and creating owner buy-in. I mean, when we opened that model in St. Louis, we had guys coming up and playing with it. Like, oh, here's a scheme. Or why don't we try this? They were actually doing our work with us. And that's huge. I mean, that creates such a sense of how cool would it be if we did this, and that's just too important to lose. So I'm hoping that it will continue to be a tool not only for presentation and engagement, but also for investigation and collaboration.
Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to ask, as an organization gets bigger as far as headcount, it's my experience that it's harder to make sure everybody's subscribing to the principles and the culture. And how do you handle that to make sure everybody's on the same page when your business is growing in headcount?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because again, when I think about what I want my colleagues to be thinking about and doing is I want them to be thinking about, again, sort of how architecture can advance our clients' goals and how it can advance sustainability or equity or whatever we're addressing in the project. So I think having hyper clarity around what the studio goals are and have that inculcated within all of the existing members. When you add a new member, they're going to work very closely with their project team and they're going to get it. At the same time, the last thing we want to do is squelch any voices. So we want to make sure that everybody that comes into the studio feels that their responsibility is to make a contribution. And it's not just that we're going to listen to you. It's that you need to make a contribution to be part of this team. I don't know. Or I don't know.
Let's see, okay, it's working. I heard you mention goggles. Are you referring to VR and how have you implemented that?
VR? It's funny. Pre-pandemic, yes. But now, trying to get somebody to come to your office and put on goggles. And frankly, people don't like those goggles. They would prefer that you zoom through and create your own path. And so the last project that we did that we invited a team in was the Northeast Community Center in St. Paul. And we had our annex room set up with all the things. And I just talked to the city council person, and she remembered that. But again, she wouldn't put the goggles on. We had to do it and kind of show. So basically, we had James kind of putting on the goggles and walking through and sort of saying, okay, over here is this and over here is that. And then they would ask, well, can I see this or can I see that? And so that was kind of the way that worked. The time before that was a project at 3M in which, for some reason, we brought all the stands out, we brought all this stuff, and we couldn't get the Wi-Fi to connect everything. We didn't have enough connectability to make it all work. And so it took us probably 20 minutes of valuable time to set it up. So in our most recent project with a large corporation, we came in and we just had preset paths that we could stop. This is Natalia. So we could move forward or we could move backward. We couldn't twist the camera because with a rendered model, it can't fill that quickly. So I think a guided tour is going to be more valuable than a VR, unless you have another way of using VR, which I'd love to have a conversation about.
Hello, my name is Dave Blatt. I'm a second year here at Dunwoody. And First of all, real quickly, I actually met your colleague Matt Tierney through music a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And after meeting him and hearing where he works, going to your website and consuming all the wonderful information and projects is what inspired me to come to school.
That's
So
great.
personal thank you. But through this education, we're sort of hearing how the education process is evolving, and with like IPEL now happening and a lower number of ARE exams. And I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on this sort of constricting and sort of making more efficient the education process, and if you feel like there's anything lost or gained in the professional realm from sort of speeding up the process?
So speeding up the process to accreditation, to licensure. Okay, got it. Okay, so I don't think there's anything lost by speeding it up. I mean, what I think is happening is we're peeling away, stupid layers of bureaucracy. I don't think we're taking anything that's essential out of the way. I mean, I'm a huge fan of licensure. I would love to see folks getting ready to take that exam earlier. And take the exam while you're used to taking exams. You kind of get out of the habit. At the same time, I think it's very important to understand that in the education of an architect, you need to know a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of technical criteria that you need to know for that exam. And maybe the academic environment is not the right place to learn that stuff. You can get some of the basics, but I don't think you can get the detail there's so much they're trying to pack in your brain that, you need the conceptual, the historic, you need all of the skills to express yourself. You need to have gone through the design process several times. Design studio is, to shortcut design studio is just not a good plan. And yet you've got to have all of these other areas of information, of exposure. But I will say that your education will not end when you graduate. This is a profession, it's like any other profession. You are constantly learning new things. And so get used to learning. But no, I think take that exam as soon as you can and then keep learning. That could be just my opinion.
I think that's
Do
right.
you agree?
Yeah. Well, we're participating in that process. So.
Yeah. Well, I know, and I think it's great. I mean, our we have several colleagues that just got so far into their professional life that they just never went back. I mean, and they never took the exam. I mean, and that's just hinders. So yeah, get it done.
Hey, Julie. I was wondering, you're speaking to a room of a lot of students, and I'm wondering what are you looking for? What do you think the profession or what the student should maybe walk away as a graduate from a skill set? What do you think are some of the top things that you would want to see in a recent graduate from a skill set standpoint?
From a skill set standpoint, yeah. I think just understanding the tools of architecture, understanding kind of what architecture is. I mean, we're going to look and see a portfolio, and we're going to talk to a student about what his process was or her process was to get to this thing that they're showing, right? And so I think fundamentally, I'm going to say that the best thing you can bring to a new prospective employer is curiosity. Like, what are the questions that you asked? What was the investigation that you made about? And it's how you think. And, the tools I think are really important. I mean, we want people that can convey their thoughts, not just verbally, but also on paper or in pixels. We need that. We need to convey our ideas, and how adept you are at manipulating, massing, form, materials, all of those things are certainly going to be important to us. We want to hire people that are committed to design excellence, and that commitment comes across in many ways. We don't expect a young architect to know exactly what they want to do. They'll come in and say, "I want to do only design," and we'll say, "Well, yeah, that's the whole thing." And what we all do all the time is design. So, and slowly we find that they have a particular interest in a particular area of architecture, but that doesn't happen for 5 or 6 years, right? In the profession, you need to understand a whole project and process and the sort of broader aspects. So yeah, we like to have people that are also going to fit within our culture. So it's really interesting. I don't think we hire based on skill sets. You did a lot of that with us.
No ego. You don't hire. When I worked with you, didn't hire ego.
Yeah, we tried to stay away from people that knew how to save the world, because then go do it. You don't need us.
One over here.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for being here. 2 questions. Does your firm self-perform interior design? And does interior design ever lead the process, or does architecture always lead the process?
Design always leads the process. I'm just going to say it in the sort of broadest terms, because, I would say some projects, urban design, the urban context leads the project. Sometimes interior design leads the project, particularly when it's an interiors project. But I think the design principles remain the same. What are the larger goals? What are the aspirations of the client? What are the sort of broadest ideas that are going to propel the project forward? And so we are in the process of searching for somebody in interior design to actually come in and concentrate on that expertise within the studio. And our reasoning is that we have a good number of projects that are interior design based. Like we're doing how big is Paulad?
I was 60,000.
60,000 square foot office design. And the idea there is, we have architects leading that process. And the furniture aspect, so all of the finishes, everything is part of the architecture team. And we had a collaboration with another firm. And so that's often what we're ending up doing, is we'll bring in expertise in that area. But we're finding that the furniture folks are really providing that, the furniture suppliers. So it's it's a really interesting question. And I would love to find a great interior designer, a great lighting designer, you've heard this so many times, and a great urban planner to come in that has those areas of expertise, but still gets, the sort of architecture process. And we've worked with a number of, on residential projects, a number of interior design. You've got Martha Dayton coming next week. We've worked with Martha on a project. So yeah, it's a skill set that is incredibly important to these projects. And so we're not only looking for it, we've had it. We've had Karkeet was like totally into this, and you know, it's a hard deal because you have to work in a group of architects, and there's a particular, you know, sensibility about that. But it's a commitment that we have to provide excellence across the board. That didn't answer your question at all, did it? Did it kind of? You're really, really nice to me.
We have time for one more question. We have a hand up over here. Okay.
Good morning. As second years, we're all about to graduate and potentially continue. Do you have any advice for us? Just kind of starting?
Starting your career, whoa, I don't remember that, do you? I mean, you know, one of the things that I think is really important is to sort of make sure that you find a place in which you can develop your own voice and your own ideas, and you can just learn a ton. And I think you want to work with folks that are going to offer that. I think you deserve that. You have. One of the things I would that we think is really important for our, you know, recent grads coming in or somebody just coming to the studio for the first time is to go through a project from end to end. So don't get stuck just doing the front end. Don't get stuck just doing the back end. Don't get stuck. So I would say try to go end to end on a project, and then you know, at a certain point, your best move is to get a project that you're the lead on. You're the main person. You may have a project manager and a project architect working with you, but largely your responsibility. And then my other thing would be keep your head up. Don't get so focused on your project that you're not learning from all the other conversations that are going on in the studio. Anything else?
Good.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Is that a good start?
You ended on a high note, so thank you so much for being here, Julie.
Yeah,
Give Julie a huge round of applause, everybody. And thank you, Trevor, for inviting Julie and doing a great job with the question and answers. Everyone, I want to remind you, because I know a lot